Today's story: Consequences of Greed. Once upon a time, in a little but vibrant village nestled near the shimmering shores of a serene lake, there lived a rich noble named Espal. He was a man known far and wide for his insatiable love of wealth and money. Espal ruled over the village with an iron fist, and his subjects often grumbled about his greed. However, beneath their discontent lay a somber understanding. Their beloved country was embroiled in a brutal war, and Espal, for all his faults, played a crucial role in the kingdom's survival. Although the modest appearance of the village, in its center stood the mansion of Espal. It was nothing short of an architectural masterpiece, a testament to the noble's immense wealth and influence. The mansion's classical design was a sight to behold. Towering marble columns lined the facade, reaching skyward with an imposing presence. Stained glass windows, resplendent in color, depicted scenes from the village's history and the kingdom's proud heritage. When sunlight streamed through these windows, it cast a kaleidoscope of colors onto the lush, manicured gardens below. The mansion was surrounded by sprawling gardens, an oasis of tranquility. Lush green lawns stretched out, dotted with fragrant flower beds in vibrant hues. The mansion was surrounded by sprawling gardens, an oasis of tranquility. Lush green lawns stretched out, dotted with fragrant flower beds in vibrant hues. Stepping inside, the interior of Espal's mansion was no less lavish. Soaring ceilings were adorned with intricate frescoes, and crystal chandeliers bathed the rooms in a warm, golden glow. Priceless artworks adorned the walls, a testament to the noble's exquisite taste and extensive collection of rare and valuable artifacts. Guards, clad in gleaming armor, stood watchful at all times, a constant reminder that even in times of peace, the threat of war loomed. Their vigilance, said Espal, ensured the safety not only of himself, but also of the village and its people. One day, as the noble took his daily walk in his gardens, accompanied by his wife and his 2 personal servants, he was approached by Alexander, the guard's chief. Alexander asked the noble for an urgent meeting, as he had rumors to share. Worried, Espal agreed, and he quickly gathered his guards. An hour later, the gathering started, and Alexander, with hesitation, shared the news with everyone. Someone in the village met one of our traders while passing the lake. It seems like the trader forgot about the vow, and he spoke about the local noble that is selling fish, salted meat, and coal. This would not be something to fear, but the villagers are now spreading the rumor of Espal being the one selling these resources. Worst of all, the rumors said that the war is only a fabrication that helps the noble take the fruit of the villagers' labor. After Alexander ended his speech, the room fell silent, followed by a wave of worried whispers. After a few seconds, Espal yelled, "Enough, for now, everyone go out and search for the villager that started this rumor. After you find him, bring him to me." The meeting was abruptly ended by Espal, and all the guards went out in search of the culprit. A few hours passed by, and it was already evening. Within the opulent walls of his mansion, Espal reclined in a finely crafted armchair, his thoughts drifting like the tendrils of the fragrant incense that wafted through the room. He was surrounded by the luxuries of his estate. Priceless artworks adorned the walls, and the soft glow of crystal chandeliers bathed the room in a warm, golden light. A sudden commotion beyond the ornate doors of his mansion drew his attention. The sound of approaching footsteps, firm and resolute, echoed through the marble foyer. The imposing double doors swung open, and his guards ushered in a young man. He was disheveled and appeared to be in his prime, his eyes betraying a mix of fear and determination. Espal studied the boy, noting the fisherman's attire and sun-kissed skin, but he had no knowledge of the man's name. "Are you sure this is him?" The guards nodded. The young man seemed to swallow his fear as he replied, "Why am I here?" Espal's brows furrowed. "Why?" he repeated, his gaze narrowing. "I just wanted to meet you." With a superior voice, Espal continued, "What's your name?" The fisherman hesitated but then pressed on with conviction. "My name is Soren. I am a fisherman. Well met, Soren. I heard you know something about a traitor, is that right? Soren's fear started growing, and with an uneasy voice answered. I met a traitor on the lake, we spoke for a bit, but nothing much. Aspal, intrigued, asked, Did this traitor say anything in particular? Soren nodded and said, He told me about a noble that is trading lots of food and coal, and I know this village makes tons of it. Aspal's expression grew icier, and his guards exchanged uneasy glances. How had this fisherman come to know of his involvement in the kingdom's affairs? What secrets had he uncovered? You dare to question me? Aspal's voice grew colder, his patience wearing thin as he regarded the intruder with a steely gaze. Before the young man could respond, Aspal's guards closed in, ready to ensure his compliance. Aspal couldn't help but feel a growing sense of unease. The tranquil mansion that had served as his sanctuary now felt like a stage for an unexpected confrontation, and he knew that his secrets, carefully guarded, were at risk of being exposed. Aspal, with an uneasy voice, ordered the guards to lock Soren and prepare for tomorrow, as he will organize a village gathering. The night passed, and the next day started with a loving sunrise over the village. The courtyard of Aspal's grand mansion buzzed with activity. Chefs and servants scurried about, their aprons stained with flour and sweat as they prepared lavish dishes and set up long tables adorned with fine linens and exquisite tableware. Barrels of the finest wine and ale were rolled into place, and the air was filled with the enticing aroma of roasted meats, freshly baked bread, and an array of delectable desserts. As the villagers gathered, they couldn't help but feel a sense of awe at the imposing mansion before them, guarded by a contingent of well-armed soldiers. Aspal had ensured that his home was protected, just in case the horrors of war ever reached their peaceful village. As evening descended and the villagers began to assemble in the courtyard, Aspal made a grand entrance. He was dressed in resplendent attire, his demeanor exuding charm and warmth as he greeted his subjects. In his speech, he expressed gratitude for their unwavering support during these trying times, emphasizing the village's crucial role in the kingdom's war effort. As a token of my appreciation, Aspal declared, his voice carrying over the gathered crowd, I have prepared a feast fit for kings, to honor your dedication and sacrifices. The villagers cheered and applauded, their hearts filled with a newfound sense of pride and gratitude. They eagerly partook in the sumptuous spread, savoring every bite and reveling in the sense of community that permeated the gathering. However, as the feast reached its climax and the last toast was made, Aspal's expression grew stern. The jovial atmosphere took an unexpected turn as he turned to address the crowd once more. There is another matter I must address, Aspal announced solemnly. A matter of honesty and truth. The villagers exchanged puzzled glances, their anticipation giving way to uncertainty. Aspal continued, It has come to my attention that one among us has been spreading false rumors about my involvement in the war effort, accusing me of deceit. Allow me to present Soren, Aspal declared, a young man who has falsely accused me of actions unbecoming of a noble. The villagers turned their attention to Soren, their expressions a mixture of surprise and curiosity. Soren now found himself at the center of a tense and accusatory moment. Aspal went on to expose Soren's supposed lies and falsehoods, using eloquent words to paint the young man as a misguided troublemaker who had disrupted the harmony of the village with baseless accusations. The villagers listened intently, torn between their loyalty to their noble and their empathy for a fellow villager caught in the crossfire. Aspal concluded his speech by pronouncing a sentence of execution for Soren, banishing him from the village for his alleged transgressions. As Aspal's words echoed, already not too fond of the noble, with strong empathy for Soren, the villagers quickly grew furious. As Soren was led away from the grand gathering, a palpable tension hung in the air. The villagers, once united in celebration, were now divided by the shock of their noble's pronouncement. Many of them exchanged concerned glances, while others muttered in hushed voices about the injustice they believed had just occurred. Then, like a sudden gust of wind that sweeps through a quiet forest, a murmur of discontent began to spread among the villagers. Whispers of anger and frustration rippled through the crowd, and it didn't take long for that murmur to transform into something more powerful. A sense of solidarity ignited among the villagers, fueled by their shared empathy for Soren and their anger at what they perceived as an unjust execution. Their voices began to rise, slowly at first, like distant thunderheads gathering strength. Soon, the courtyard was filled with the sound of chanting. The villagers, standing shoulder to shoulder, raised their voices in unison. The chant, a powerful declaration of their collective disapproval, echoed off the walls of Aspal's grand mansion. Soren! 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 The chant grew louder, more fervent, as the villagers expressed their fury and their refusal to accept the noble's judgment. It was a remarkable sight, as the same people who had moments ago toasted to unity and sacrifice were now united in their protest against the perceived injustice. Aspal watched from his elevated position, his face a mask of surprise and, perhaps, a hint of concern. He had not anticipated the villagers' strong reaction to Soren's execution. The chant continued, growing in intensity with each repetition. The villagers, their voices raised in defiance, sent a clear message that they would not stand idly by while one of their own was unjustly killed. As the villagers' chant of Soren! 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 Reverberated through the courtyard, Aspal found himself facing a situation he hadn't anticipated. He stood on the balcony overlooking the gathering, his gaze fixed on the defiant crowd below. Aspal's initial surprise turned into a mixture of concern and irritation. He had expected some dissent, but the unity and fervor of the villagers had caught him off guard. He could sense the growing unrest and understood that he needed to act swiftly to regain control of the situation. Stepping forward, he raised his hand in a commanding gesture, calling for silence. Gradually, the chanting began to subside, replaced by an uneasy hush that swept through the crowd like a shiver. Villagers, Aspal began, his voice carrying a note of authority. I understand your concern and your loyalty to one another. It is essential to remember that the decisions I make are based on what I believe is best for our village and the kingdom. However, I cannot ignore your sentiment, so I have decided to reconsider. And not punish Soren, not for now. He paused, allowing his words to sink in, and then continued. I have always acted in the interest of our community and our shared future. Rest assured that my decisions, no matter how difficult they may seem, are made with careful consideration. The atmosphere remained tense, and Aspal realized that the situation required a delicate touch. He knew that he would need to address the issue of Soren's rumors more thoroughly in the days to come and perhaps find a way to reconcile with the villagers. For now, he acknowledged their concerns and the unity they had displayed. After Aspal's final speech, the meeting ended, with the villagers each going to their place, and Soren remaining as a captive. As weeks passed, Soren was still not released free, and his family grew more and more worried. Even if the young fisher was captive, the rumors continued to spread, and the villagers were even more curious. One day, Soren's father, Ildrid, a weathered fisherman, decided to make the arduous journey to the capital city, where the king resided. He hoped to seek an audience with the king himself, to inquire about the progress of the war and the fate of his village. The journey was long and challenging, but Ildrid's determination carried him forward. Upon reaching the capital, he navigated the bustling streets until he finally stood before the grand palace gates. There, he humbly requested an audience with the king, his voice echoing with the sincerity of his purpose. After a series of inquiries and checks, Ildrid was granted an audience with the monarch. He entered the opulent throne room, where the king sat upon a majestic throne, his countenance stern and regal. Ildrid, with respect in his voice, asked the king about the state of the war and the support the kingdom had received from his village. He spoke of the villagers' sacrifices and the challenges they faced, their hope that their contributions were making a difference. The king, listening attentively, was visibly surprised by Ildrid's inquiries. He leaned forward in his throne, his brow furrowing as he processed the information. Finally, he spoke with a mix of astonishment and concern. "War? What war do you speak of? There has been no war in our kingdom in recent memory." Ealdred, taken aback by the king's revelation, felt a rush of confusion and relief. He and the whole village had been led to believe that the kingdom was embroiled in a dire conflict, and now, the truth was laid bare. A Spall had been lying to both the villagers and the king. After Ealdred's visit to the capital, where he learned from the king that there was no ongoing war, a wave of disbelief and anger washed over him. He couldn't fathom how a Spall had deceived not only the villagers but also the kingdom's monarch with his false tales of poverty and a fictional war. Ealdred returned to the village, and his first order of business was to gather the villagers and share the shocking news. As word spread through the community, a sense of betrayal and outrage filled the hearts of the villagers. In response, the villagers decided to take matters into their own hands. They collectively requested an audience with the king, urging him to visit their village and witness the truth for himself. Upon receiving their request, the king, intrigued by the villagers' determination and eager to uncover the deception, agreed to make the journey to their humble abode. On a crisp morning, the king's entourage, including his advisors and guards, set out for the village near the serene lake. As they arrived, they were greeted by a scene of simple but well-kept cottages, bustling markets, and thriving gardens. It was a stark contrast to the image of destitution that a Spall had painted. The villagers, led by Ealdred, welcomed the king with open arms, eager to showcase their prosperous community. They guided him through the lively streets, pointing out the thriving businesses, the bountiful harvests, and the thriving local market. As the tour continued, the king couldn't help but be impressed by the village's prosperity and the evident sense of unity among its inhabitants. He met artisans, farmers, and fishermen, all of whom proudly displayed their contributions to the kingdom's welfare. However, the true revelation awaited the king as he approached the Spall's grand mansion, an opulent structure that stood in stark contrast to the modest homes of the villagers. The mansion, with its towering spires and lavish gardens, was a testament to the noble's immense wealth. Upon entering the mansion, the king was met with a sight that left him in awe. The interior was adorned with priceless artworks, ornate furniture, and countless treasures that spoke of immense affluence. The grandeur of the mansion stood as irrefutable evidence that the village was anything but poor. Overwhelmed by the sight before him, the king turned to Ealdred, who had accompanied him on this journey. "It seems," the king began, his voice filled with both amazement and disappointment, "that we have been misled. This village is far from the destitution I was led to believe." Ealdred nodded gravely. "Indeed, your majesty. A Spall's deceptions have harmed both our village and your kingdom." Realizing the extent of a Spall's deceit, the king made a decisive judgment. He ordered an immediate investigation into the noble's actions and decreed that a Spall would be held accountable for his lies and the wealth he had hoarded. As the truth about a Spall's deceitful actions became undeniable, the king was left with no choice but to deliver a just and decisive judgment. He ordered a Spall's immediate execution, for his lies had not only deceived the villagers but had also tarnished the integrity of the entire realm. A Spall's guards, severely outnumbered, laid down their weapons and surrendered to the king's soldiers. Alexander, the guard's chief of the village, was exiled from the entire kingdom, and his fellow guards were sent to jail. The king turned to Ealdred, the honest and trustworthy fisherman who had sought the truth and had uncovered a Spall's lies. The king recognized Ealdred's integrity and his commitment to the welfare of the village and the kingdom. He believed that Ealdred was the right person to lead the village. With the king's blessing and the support of the villagers, Ealdred was appointed as the new head of the village. It was a role he embraced with humility and determination, vowing to prioritize the well-being of the villagers above all else. One of Ealdred's first acts as the new village leader was a testament to his compassion and sense of justice. He ordered that a Spall's grand mansion, once a symbol of opulence and excess, be transformed into a welcoming refuge for anyone in need. The mansion would now serve as a place where travelers and villagers alike could seek shelter, warmth, and a hot meal, a stark contrast to its former life as a monument to greed. Soren, now a free fisherman once again, continued his work, spending his days on the tranquil lake, providing a vital source of food for the village. He also became an advocate for transparency and honesty in the community, ensuring that the lessons learned from the past were not forgotten. With transparency and fairness as his guiding principles, Yildrid led the village to even greater prosperity, ensuring that its contributions to the kingdom were made with honesty and integrity. If you've listened until now, make sure you like and subscribe, so you'll know when the next story comes around.